Hey everyone, we're live, pal. We're going to get right to the show. No intro, no funny business. Well,
Oh
actually,
yeah?
we do have a
Oh
little
yeah,
funny
Garrett?
business.
You know what I have here? You know what I have here? Syringes. You know what I'm going to do with these?
I hope not
All of
poke
them.
yourself in the mouth. we
No,
we are
nothing
going to
wrong.
start with a little bit of hijinks because I
Yeah.
saw a tweet last week. Some people brought it to my attention and they said, "What does this mean? What does this mean?" It was a tweet of a black bird on a plate, on a dinner plate, and people were asking me, what does this mean? Is this about Twitter? Is this about Elon's app? The black bird? Is it about the fabulous Freebirds? And I was like, come on, guys. This is very straightforward here. Andrew, can you explain what this tweet was all about from September the 6th at 6:06
I I
p.m.?
I'm shocked that people don't know the expression to eat crow.
Yes.
I was telling people that have told me that there is no AEW deal. I mean, listen, and that's the most wacky part. There are I don't know how big, how small, but there's a good amount of people that daily remind me and tell me that AEW is not getting a deal. They're getting canceled. There's no way WBD is paying them anything. It's over for them. And I posted that because I got word that it is done.
So when you say that it is done, does it mean that an announcement is forthcoming? Does it mean that there's still T's to cross and I's to dot? Like what does done actually mean?
I don't WBD side. It's the deal is finished.
Okay.
There's no. There's no question as to the deal being completed. I would say signed.
At this
So
point though, we haven't seen any terms, so we don't know what the value is for anything yet.
I do know some things. I don't know the value.
Oh.
No, I don't know value, but I do know some aspects of what they are going to be doing.
Okay. So
yeah,
I don't want to cut you off.
I'm not. I don't just for. Let's have fun with this. I'm not going to guarantee you anything, okay? But I will say I feel 99.9% confident that Max AEW content will be on Max. Pay-per-views will go on Max. I mean, nothing different from that I've said over the last year and a half, and that's the funny part here. I've said this from day one. I put out a tweet months ago about simulcasting, and you and I, Garrett, we have spoken about this numerous times, on air, off air. A little bit more, and I'm not doing this to be like, oh, look at all the secrets I know. I have to save people. I can't expose people when they tell me things within AEW, within WWE, with from the networks. So I have to be a little vague. I have to be a little tongue in cheek here. Okay. I'm not a reporter. I'm not a journalist. I do wrestling media, and I like to have fun with it. I like to leave it up to people to decrypt or encrypt, whatever, to determine what I really mean. Max is going to get AEW content. I feel very confident to say that simulcasting will become a thing. I don't know when, but I'm very confident because that is something that Tony really wanted. And he sees the success of the NBA. He sees how linear television is, slowly crumbling, right?
Yes.
USA Network, a couple of years ago, pre-pandemic, had almost 90 million people.
It is crumbling faster than even the experts can predict. That's how fast it's crumbling.
Yeah, and listen, you have been involved in this because you're a tech guy, and so am I. I was shocked at that number that USA Network's only in 68 million or 69 million homes. That's a wild number.
Yes.
And that shows you the importance of streaming. And, we spoke about this a while ago. We said, oh, maybe in 5 to 10 years, streaming will be there. I'm starting to change that. It's closer to 5 than 10. I'm pivoting here with that. And Tony sees that. Tony's a smart guy. He's an analytics guy. You know, he likes numbers and he sees the numbers. I think streaming will be a thing. I think pay-per-views will be on there. I don't feel that it'll be exclusive because they will continue working with Johan Promotions for pay-per-views in sporting venues and in the theater. And if you're dealing with Johan Promotions, you're dealing with a cable provider. So I don't believe that it's an exclusivity thing, but they will be on Max. I don't know if it's $50 a shot. I don't know if this is a bundled thing, which you have some more insight on that BR pushing the BR tier for Max. I've spoken about this so much, Garrett. If you want to throw some questions, and I'll try to answer them.
Sure. And if we get any good questions, super chats from the audience, we should toss those out as well. Okay, here's what I know about the BR tier on Max. Originally, when this tier was presented, the idea was they would give it to you for free, and then at some point they were going to upcharge, so you actually would have to subscribe to this tier, and I think it was like $10. Lo and behold, they never charged anybody, and I think it's because they were still trying to figure out how to work with the cable companies on the content, right? Because the what they are actually paying for when the cable company pays Warner Brothers their how many ever dollars per subscriber, they're paying for exclusivity on cable. So now if you can just subscribe to Max and you can get the same content, that is taking a cut out of the what the cable provider is paying for. So I think they were trying to figure out how to work with each other on that end. So they never actually did the surcharge. I read a couple of weeks ago, one of the Hollywood media insiders, they said that surcharge was going to be coming back, and the idea of charging for the tier was going to be coming back soon. I haven't seen a due date. I haven't seen anything. And like you said, we don't know how the pay-per-view model will be if it is on Max, but just that insight of, oh, you have to subscribe an extra $10 to your already either $7.99, $17 or $21 Max subscription. So on top of that, it does make you wonder if it's a similar thing to how WWE deals, where you just kind of get it for your overall subscription. Now, of course, this is a little bit higher of a subscription because there is an extra tier for the sports content. That makes sense to me, but it is not anything that I know of. I was just trying to put things together, do some math of the information that I know that was out there.
Garrett, do you have a calculator by any chance?
Yes.
Let's do this math, okay?
Okay.
It's simple math. Let's do it live on the air, right? And let's talk about profitability of pay-per-views and what's worth doing and what's not worth doing for Max and Tony, right? Let's say they get an average of 100,000 buys per show, which is low, but let's divide that by 12. Let's do that by 12. You're talking 12. Let's go with that, okay? Then multiply it by 50, right? Because it's $50 per head. Now let's do 40. Let's do AEW will get 40% of that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just. I don't know that exact number. It could be 50, could be 40, could be 60. Let's do 40%.
Okay.
What are we at?
So, what is that? This is why doing math live on air is a bad thing. You see, the thing is Dave does this stuff in his head, and so then when you said bust out the calculator, I was like, uh-oh. Okay, let's do this again. So 12 pay-per-views a year.
Yeah. At 100,000 buys.
100K. And
times
then,
$50.
Times 50.
I know.
I can't even do it. Now I'm on the spot. But basically what you're trying to do is you're trying to figure out how much money they make off of pay-per-view and what would be the dollar amount that would get Tony to give up his pay-per-view.
Exactly.
So what do you think that has to be? Does it have to be 1.5x of what he gets?
I would assume you want more than what you're getting, right? And you want it, you're projecting growth as well. So you have to incorporate that. And if it is a 5-year deal, you have to consider where will you be in 5 years. You know, this is a tiered thing. These contracts are tiered. So I'm very curious about the pay-per-view because he will be leaving if he does go to Max for a bundled deal. Max is going to have to pay him for that. I don't know what that amount will be, though. I really don't. There's a lot of I don't speculate. I don't want to speculate on money because I have no idea what WBD is valuing these things at. I know what AEW could potentially make. I don't know what they're valuing it at. And we saw, you know, I think it's going to be healthy. What was said to me, the words that were said to me were a significant increase. Well, however you want to take that, take that. But now you got archives on there. Now you got pay-per-view on there. Now you're getting, you're getting a renewal on your contract. So it does look promising for sure on the Max on the WBD side of things for Tony.
Yes. And so, the thing that I always look back on now, what does WBD get out of this? Because what they get out of this is a recurring number of diehard AEW subscribers. And I really don't know what that number is. Like their best pay-per-view, they did over 200,000 buys, right? Is that the minimum number of people who want to watch at least one or two AEW pay-per-views? I don't know if that is the case or not. Is that number higher? Is that number lower? Because that's the math that Tony has to figure out. Because if he believes his pay-per-view business from the buy rate perspective is kind of close to the ceiling, then maybe you do try and put it on Max and take some money and give up that freedom to sell them individually. And that is the other part of it is if more people watch your shows, and we saw this with WWE and Peacock, if more people watch your big shows, they may watch your weekly shows. They may get, they may get addicted to the weekly television, and then you see your other numbers go up. So it's where things are going, right? And this goes back to the story that Dave told of the Saudi Arabia fund and how they want to change the pay-per-view model. They basically want to lower the price of a pay-per-view because they believe that the more people who watch, the better it is overall for their product. And they don't need to make so much money off of the pay-per-view buys. But then if you look at the Canelo fight, which is coming up, I would imagine, I don't know for sure because I haven't looked, I would imagine that show is at least $70. So if you undercut the pay-per-view business by $50, then what does the Canelo side have to do for their next fight? They may see a cut in their pay-per-view buys, and they may have to figure out.
I don't think that last Canelo fight did well. That last Canelo fight did not do well.
Yeah.
It's very expensive. It's very expensive for most people.
Yeah, I agree. So this is part of the future of this business. Now, here's the game changer of all game changers. At least I think so. This Mike Tyson, Jake Paul fight.
Yeah.
You just have to be a Netflix subscriber and you get this fight. So there's no surcharge on top of what your Netflix subscription is, and you can watch this fight. What if Netflix is like, yeah, we want all of the big fights and we'll pay for them in some way, and we're just going to put them on our network. I know Amazon has a deal with one of the boxing promotions, so maybe PBC. So I think they have something where they're selling boxing pay-per-view. So this whole industry, the business model, it's constantly changing, and there are different ways that we're going to see content distributed, which is fascinating and not easy, right? Because the pay-per-view industry has been tried and true since the late 80s or the mid 80s or whatever. And now things are changing. And if Tony leaves the pay-per-view industry, then there goes another consistent performer for this business. And I don't know where they're going to find more AEWs out there.
Yeah, they don't exist, and that's the thing. And people, for a large scale production that AEW is, it is very difficult to find that. Especially in, people are promising everything in the world of TV and nobody delivers. Tony delivers. It looks like a mainstream product. It feels like a mainstream product. It's able to garner hundreds of thousands of viewers per week. These are all very important to an industry that's slowly fading away, and they got to grasp onto first run live programming. And you get this 52 weeks times 2, or maybe 3, or maybe 4 a year. And that is very unique. Nobody's able, other than the news, who else produces live content like that? Nobody.
Yeah. Did you say we had a question?
We do have a question. Yeah. Trust the Process has a question.
There we
Andrew,
go.
of all the stuff you know about the AEW media situation, what percentage of it have you withheld due to not being able to speak publicly? I mean, throughout the entire time, I've had to withhold stuff, but I think now I've been pretty transparent, and you can kind of read between the lines on some of this stuff. I do have there are 2 reasons why I hold on to stuff. One, I always want to confirm. I have to confirm. I can't just be like, hey, this one told me this. I've done that a couple times and I've gotten burned. So I've learned the hard way. With this AEW stuff, I've been pretty transparent on everything that I know. Maybe, right now, that secondary deal stuff is fascinating to me. And I may know some things on that I have not been able to confirm with anybody, but that is a fascinating thing. Tony does not have an exclusive. The exclusivity is potentially gone for Max, which is fine. You want to diversify your portfolio of media partners. That's what Tony seems to be doing. Whether or not it's shopping around Rampage or starting a new show like Shockwave, or Shockwave's a pay-per-view, I think it's a healthy thing for them to have, is 2 different branding, network partners for content. I don't know what the hell that show would be if they do go, Shockwave. If that, let's say that's a show, I don't imagine it's an A-list show.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of emphasis is put on, well, they're only getting 100, 200,000 views with this show. What are they going to do with the other one? Well, listen, nobody looked at Velocity as to what it did, and nobody looked at what, Jacked and Metal and all these other WWE show main event, what they did. But there is value in having that content on television. There is money to be made with it. You want as much content out there as possible, because that's how you make money per hour.
Yes. Okay, so here's a question.
Yeah.
Is this another question from Trust the Process?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it seems like.
With how relatively successful and profitable AEW's pay-per-view business has been, do you think it will make WWE eventually reconsider their own model and whether they're leaving money on the table?
I don't think so. I think it's too late for them. I know that was a major problem early on with Vince and the co-CEOs, with Michelle, George Barrios and Michelle Wilson. Yeah, I think so. I think those. Yeah. When they were going to, I actually, at that time, I consulted with a third party because of my media thing that I do, my consulting. And when that network originally was starting, I was working with a third party that was somewhat involved in this. And it was talk. Nobody thought that Vince would put all pay-per-views for $9.99 because he was leaving a lot of money on the table, especially when you have when you have one pay-per-view that could do 1 million buys at $70.
Yep.
And a lot of people saw it as a big mistake. And I do think that it was a mistake giving away the whole thing. I think it should have been, the big 4 could have been on pay-per-view and everything else could have been on the network, and that would have been enough. I think it's too late for WWE now. I think they're making too much money with their partners like Peacock, and to say, okay, you know what, I'm not gonna. This is not on pay-per-view. I still believe it's a reality that we get a WrestleMania that is on network television. I still feel that is a strong reality.
Okay, do you think network television? Do you think Netflix would be equal to your network television idea?
Now, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, yes.
So the reason why I say that is because the WWE pay-per-view business is going to be coming up for renewal. That's kind of, it's UFC and then their pay-per-view business. And you got to believe that Netflix is going to want that content as well. They already are going to have it, I think, for a lot of countries. But I'm talking specifically about the US. Peacock is at this point still, I think they're still a money loser, though they've had some really good business of late. You saw the Olympics, and the Olympics were very well done. They just did a Friday night football game from Brazil that did a lot of views and crushed SmackDown, and by proxy, Collision and Rampage. That Collision number was crazy low.
Yikes.
And so they're doing great business. So I don't know, because if you would have asked me 6 months ago or even a year ago, like if WWE had the opportunity to put something on Netflix or put some on Peacock, I would go like, Net's like no problem. Though Peacock is performing and they're just so much smaller. But there, that renewal is going to be interesting because Netflix has enough money to basically outbid everybody if they really want to. And I think the early stages of what this Raw deal that they have, it's going to be good data for them to figure out, okay, what is actually the pay-per-view worth? If we get X number of views on this regular Monday show, how much more are we going to get for these pay-per-view shows? And, I think people need to realize that the reason why Netflix wants to get into live sports has more to do with their ads business than anything else. So, if they get WWE's pay-per-view business, do they run ads on them? For those ad tier customers? I think yes, absolutely yes. That's why they want it. And then we will see those same goofy Bobby Lashley video packages for those who don't have ads in place of those ads. So that's going to be an interesting conversation. And that's the one that I think, because, the thing about this AEW deal, the heavy hitters in sports media aren't really covering this one that closely. They're covering Warner Brothers, the company, but the big deal was the NBA deal and then the WNBA deal. Those were kind of the talks. You don't really see anything about AEW in any of these with any of these sports media journalists. And I look because I follow all of them.
Let me tell you one of the reasons why. What number are we talking about? Right, those media rights deals primarily focus in on how much money will be given to the whatever the league is, the NFL, the NBA, the MLB. Nobody really know. I mean, there's been no public conversation regarding, Tony Khan is getting, $250 million a year for blah, blah, blah. Or, I'm just throwing a number there. That's never been reported ever. It's all speculation. And that's why I stay away from that, because I have no idea. We could assume what their current number is, right?
Mm-hmm.
We could guess. We've heard numbers, we heard 48 million early on, then we heard 70 million, then somebody said 80 million. Those numbers nobody really knows. It's not really disclosed. So, yeah, it's hard to talk about something like this when you have no idea what that rights deal entails, other than, the product and how you're distributing the product. For Netflix, we knew what Netflix is paying. It became full disclosure. It was a huge story because they're gloating about it. Netflix is talking about acquiring WWE, and WWE loves the fact that they're getting paid billions of dollars. But Netflix also has 277 million subscribers worldwide. So
I think WBD is going to want this number out, though.
If it's a good number, if it's a really strong number, I don't see why, why nobody would talk about this. I don't know why
the reason
it
why
wouldn't
they
be in
want
that
it out.
Variety article or the Deadline article,
The reason why they want it out is because they want to prove to the public that they are adding content so that their price, they keep the same amount of money from these cable subscribers, because that's what Comcast, like if you're Comcast, you want to undercut them, right? Because they just lost the NBA. They are also a competitor for your business. So you want to take a piece out of what you have to pay them every month for their subscribers, and they're doing so without the NBA. And so if I'm WBD, I want this thing out. I'm over promoting what AEW means to our bottom line. I'm writing that they are, every Wednesday night, they're the top entertainment program on cable. I'm writing all of those things that a lot of the WWE lifers scoff at because they just look at the overall audience and they don't understand that you have to kind of compare it to the night. And I would, if I'm WBD, I make them look like $1,000,000, and I make
Yeah.
the public pay attention to go, hey, do you know about WWE? Well, we have this other product that might be a little bit more interesting to you, and we are showing our faith in it by giving them a lot of money to stick around and to be the product on our network. So I think that they need to get that information out, and I'm assuming that once that announcement comes out, whenever it is, in the next couple weeks or whenever, I think we'll see some of those sports media guys write about it, even if it's just a small blip compared to a lot of the other stuff. But the other reason why that I think they should make this public, and they should really try and get this out in as many journalists' hands as possible, is because there are not that many actual sports media rights deals. Like, everything is getting locked up. So there's that side of the industry is kind of going to be quiet with news. So this can be AEW's opportunity to do that too.
Yeah. I love this stuff. This is so fascinating to me. Um, I listen. It's great. It's great for professional wrestling to have another avenue, right? If you're a wrestler, if you're anybody that works in the world of professional wrestling, producers, think about um how many people work in the business, in the industry, not just talent, but behind the scenes. You have another company making hundreds of millions of dollars, let's say, a year in a TV rights deal. That could only help. It's only a positive. The AEW does have problems. They got to work on those. But as far as a rights deal goes, I mean, this is the best thing that they could possibly do. And I think for Warner Media to get behind AEW, like you said, I think they should, and they very well. Look at their stock right now; it's at $7.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a company that was nearly an $80 stock, 3 years ago.
Yeah.
A little over 3 years ago, they were $80. I mean, they merged and they did this, and they've just slowly, gone down for a number of reasons, right? They've canceled projects. Their acquired debt is astronomical between the two. They need a shot in the arm also, along with AEW, and I think this is good for both of them. They're very good partners. I mean, there's never been a complaint I've heard. I'm sure internally sometimes people complain, but overall, it's generally very positive, and that's what you want in a partner.
Let's go back to this pay-per-view business thing. So let's say I assume when you meant 12 pay-per-views, you mean 12 AEW shows, not 9 AEW and 3 ROH. Is that what you meant?
Well, at what point? Originally, I was told that there would be, the goal was when they go to Max to have 12 pay-per-views. That's what was said to me.
Because if we use your math, we're talking about, between a 20 and 25 million a year dollar business. If you are AEW and you are Tony Khan, and if you can get that consistently, let's say 25 million for your pay-per-views, do you take it just because of the idea that there's just going to be more visibility? There's going to be more people watching. You take what you think you're going to earn, even without upselling that business. I wonder if it's still worth it, even if WBD's like, we're only going to give you what you would have earned at X. Because more visibility, better relationship with Max, your fan base is happier for not having to pay $50. You can probably go as long as you want on some of these shows, which may be bad for us. But yeah, like, would you take even money? Would you take what you think you could earn on the market directly from Max and call it a day, or would you still want more from them?
If that was the case, Tony would have taken a deal a long time ago.
Okay.
You know, I know that he was presented with something late last year, and he didn't want to do it. He wanted everything, aligned at the same time, and that's why they did an extension on TV. You know, the contract ended, and then they not that it ended, but they opted to extend it to continue the relationship and the negotiation for the deal. I think if Tony felt that way, he would have taken an earlier deal. He was negotiating, then he hired, obviously lawyers are now involved. I think he got what he wanted. From what I'm seeing, I believe, I don't know the price. Outside of the price, I think he got everything he wanted. I don't know if Ring of Honor is involved in that. I've never heard anybody mention Ring of Honor once, but the pay-per-view, like you said, I'm sorry, I got distracted here. The pay-per-views, if they are on Max, I would assume they're going to 12. Already Grand Slam is at it, so what is that now? What do we have for AEW pay-per-views with Grand Slam? That's February. March will be Revolution.
I mean, are we counting Wrestle Dynasty in January? Is that going to be? That's an AEW show, right? A combined AEW and New Japan show. Okay, I would hope that's an AEW pay-per-view rather than a New Japan show. Though, if it's on New Japan, then if you already have New Japan, then you don't have. I just New Japan is not really like a major league.
So let's go through that, right? Let's go through that. Yeah. Let's say that's January, because that is a big show, right? They're part of it. They got that in January. February is going to be Grand Slam. March they'll probably move Revolution to March, right? Because that's late February. April, nothing right now. May they have Double or Nothing. June, Forbidden Door. All In, All Out, Wrestle Dream, World's End. Am I missing anything? Oh, and Full Gear.
Yep.
So that's 10.
Yep.
All right, you're close enough. April is Dynasty. That's 11. Dynasty. I forgot about Dynasty. That's 11. So, I mean, you're pretty much there.
Yep.
Depending on how, like, if you're doing a 4-week cycle or a 6-week cycle, I mean, you're there. That's a monthly pay-per-view. I would say if you're doing a pay-per-view every 6 weeks, you're at a monthly pay-per-view.
So
and that's great.
You mentioned Shockwave. You also mentioned ROH, because the other rumor, and I'm hearing that the F4W board is going pretty wild with this one. The other rumor that we've been hearing, and I think people have been insinuating, I heard Dave on Wrestling Observer Radio talk about it after All Out. There is a rumor that they may have another show, and it could be outside of the WBD umbrella.
Yeah. That's what I'm hearing, that there will be, they are working on something outside of the WBD umbrella. And when Tony, it's funny because Tony in that press conference or scrum, he said, it's 90%, I haven't signed it, and then he said 100%. Well, it's kind of true, because I would imagine the WBD deal is done. The other 10% is maybe this.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too when he said that. That's where my mind went.
Now the big question is, well, who's a contender, right? Who's a contender here? I said this last week. I said this on Observer Live. Fox is fascinating to me. And I've heard Fox from a number of people. The Fox stuff is interesting because I spoke to somebody that is on the ad sales side, and the way he put it, he didn't say, we're getting AEW, but he did say the following about how inventory is very interesting. To convince advertisers to advertise on a niche product, even though you have a decent, key demo, but it's still a niche product, there's a little apprehension, especially professional wrestling. There's still that apprehension with professional wrestling. The problem with SmackDown was the money that they were getting was too much.
Yes.
It was way too much. So you couldn't match the ad rate. The ad rate couldn't make it up. However, you have that inventory. You don't want to have it go to waste. You want to allocate it somewhere else. I don't know if that means AEW. I don't know if what channel or who, or if this is an they go to Fox, if it's FS1 or if it's a Tubi deal. I don't know. I don't know much about that side, but it is fascinating to me that he did bring it up. That says something.
And I was wondering about FS1, and I was trying to think if FS1 made sense. And I was kind of trying to figure out what their overall weekly average was, and that that information's a little bit harder to kind of make sense of. I think if you put a valuable AEW show on FS1, you would probably be one of the dandies of that network, just because of the
their numbers are low.
consistency.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything is so spread out. Now, it is college football season, and then it will be college basketball season. So there will be content on FS1. So you have to be very strategic with the day of the week for if there was another AEW program. But I don't know if a low-level AEW program would be all that beneficial. They have Dynamite, they have Collision, and they have Rampage. Dynamite's not going anywhere, obviously. I don't imagine Collision is going anywhere. That would leave Rampage kind of to be up in the air, or this ROH product. But I wouldn't want to create a new partnership with a network with the ROH product unless you heavily revamped the TV tapings. You created it as an entirely different brand. You had a whole set of folks who people want to watch, and you make that show very meaningful. Like, you can't do it in the same way that you do ROH TV right now on the ROH streaming network. So it would lead me to believe that maybe you make Rampage a fairly important show again, or at least you try, and that could be something. But yeah, that is so interesting, because I think to most of us who are inundated with professional wrestling, we think of like another show, and that just seems like, oh my gosh, we already have too much wrestling on television.
Yeah.
But if you're only talking about an AEW audience, they're not watching WWE, so maybe they don't care. But I think you do have to make it as close to a Dynamite level show for it to make a difference, I think.
I don't think that's going to be the case. I mean, I don't think having an A-list show is going to be the case. They're struggling with Collision to begin with. Who knows what that would have been if CM Punk was still there. I mean, that would maybe be a different story here, but that is struggling. And that's one of my favorite shows to watch. I really enjoy Collision. I just don't think it's the A-adjacent show anymore. I think we really know that Dynamite is what the viewers tune into. And anything you take away now, I'm sure that they'll probably think about rebranding it or doing not rebranding. I'm sorry, just adding some life to that show more than they're doing now. But I can't see them doing another A-tier show for and doing it an hourly. I think Ring of Honor is fascinating. We heard Tony say that he's more open to, or somebody said Tony's more open to having it as an AEW presents Ring of Honor. And but what do you do with that product? What is it? Is it your developmental? Is it just another show to get people on? Is it a trial to see how people do? You have Dustin there. You have the Von Erichs there now. You have Sammy Guevara there, and plus everybody else. So Mark Briscoe's your champion, but what is the purpose of Ring of Honor other than preserving the lineage of Ring of Honor? That's not going to cut it, really. The preservation of Ring of Honor and putting on a 1-hour TV show every week just to preserve it, it's not a business decision at that point. Unless you're able to make money with it. We saw that Ring of Honor, wasn't CW interested in it?
That was a rumor a little while ago.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's interesting.
But we've also heard the other rumor, and this is just a rumor. I'm not saying that I know this for a fact or anything, but there was the other rumor that Tony really wanted ROH on WBD, and maybe there was some disagreement there about whether they wanted a non AEW branded show, or maybe they already had too many shows. So we also heard that. I don't
Yeah.
know if that's true, but that would be a reason for Tony to look for other buyers, right? As if
Yeah,
WBD
I
didn't
have
want it.
no, I have zero, and it's funny. I have zero insight on Ring of Honor and what they're going to do with it. But here's the other thing, right? If they are putting the AW content on Max, right? Let's say they are. Let's say that. I mean, I'm pretty certain they are, but let's say they are. Does it really hurt to add Ring of Honor to that? I don't think so. I don't think it hurts them to have, like have your AEW section or whatever you're doing. You have Rampage, you have Collision, you have this, and then you have, Ring of Honor.
I would, if it was up to me, I would get rid of the Ring of Honor service and just port everything over to Max. But I don't know.
I don't even know how many subscribers. Dave knows that number, right?
Like 10,000 or something, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's what he said. Yeah, 10,000 subscribers. I mean, it's maybe it pays some salary. I don't know. It maybe pays some of the staff. There's so much more you could do with that. I always felt when they were in that studio, in that like little studio that they were shooting in, they were at Universal, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was perfect. Have the Universal tapings, have that be your developmental. You put on a big pay-per-view somewhere every now and then, which they can, the smaller buildings, like 3,000 people. Mark Briscoe could be there, and then you have talent go in and out, and then you work that. I felt that place would have been good for guys like Brian Pillman Jr. and even Sammy Guevara, and then you bring in a couple legends. It's very similar to what NXT does. I thought that was a nice incubator for good wrestling.
And NXT is actually a really good blueprint for if you wanted to do that.
It's a great blueprint.
I know a lot of AEW fans don't like how they do the NXT show. You don't have to do it like that. You don't have to try all of your gimmicks and dress it up in lots of colors, but you should, if you wanted to, you should go younger for sure on the developmental. That's that part of the NXT experience is working, is by them having the younger talent on that show. That part is working. And then when you need a little bit of bump in the ratings, you're like, oh, we got this guy named CM Punk. He'll show up on NXT. He'll bring over an extra 100,000 viewers, and you can do that on that ROH show too, if you had it on television. Before we actually change to WWE, because I wanted to ask you a couple things about that. I need to get your thoughts. You and I have not talked about this. Hangman and Swerve. As you're watching that match and you see them, playing a game of their own top this during the match, what were you thinking? Did you enjoy it? Were you in horror? Were you just like, yep, that makes sense because of what Hangman did to Swerve's house? Like, what were you thinking about when you were watching that match?
I will start by saying that style is not my favorite, right? I'm not a big
I actually really hate it.
I'm not a hardcore wrestling fan. I as I say that, I have a fucking ECW hardcore wrestling sign next to me. Okay, but I said this on Beyond the Bell with Rich. I go, my flavor has changed in wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Maybe that was a flavor I really enjoyed when I was 14 years old, and I was going to the Elks Lodge, and a riot was breaking out every time. I'm 40 years old. I see things a little different. It's not my favorite style. However, I thought they did a tremendous job. If that is I understood the story. It's a blood feud. This man set his house on fire. The last time they wrestled, he hung him. Hangman was hung. He broke into his house. It was exactly what I expected it to be. I didn't expect it to be tame. I'm not a fan of unprotected chair shots whatsoever. Even though it's gimmicked, and they cut the shot, they flip the camera. It was a violent, ultra hardcore match. And I not my style. But again, I'm able to see it beyond my point of view and beyond my lens and recognize that, listen, it may not be my flavor that I picked, but it was still fantastic.
Do you think it worked for what they were trying to do?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it does who's the babyface here now?
I was told that Swerve is supposed to be the babyface.
Okay, I mean, if he gets off of TV for a little bit and then he comes back with some redemption arc, I think that's fine. Or this was the blow off, and that kind of makes sense too. You want the last match to be something astronomical that people are going to remember, and then when they eventually wrestle again, I mean, how do you go back to having a normal wrestling match? That's what I want to know.
Actually, I take that back. I'm not sure if Swerve is supposed to be the babyface because as you were saying that, I was thinking about the story. And first,
just hatred.
Hangman was the one who you felt sorry for because Swerve broke into his house, right? But then he turned vengeance. It was all about vengeance for him. So that part is blurred, and I think without the I think that's what stops this from being like a mainstream program that more people are paying attention to. It's just it's hard for people to understand because we don't see that type of storytelling.
You were at Dave's. You watched this at Dave's.
Yes.
What was your initial feeling watching it with Dave? Did you hate it? Or were you like, listen, it may not be for me, but they did a good job?
My thought was watching the match, because Dave was getting texts from people who were there saying that nobody's responding to any of this really violent stuff. This is in the beginning. And I was like, yeah, why would they? Yeah. And I was like, why would they when they know that this normal stuff, which is staple guns to the chest and, throwing the person into the cage, all of that stuff is just setting the table for what is going to be absolute chaos. So I felt that that's why they were sitting on their hands a little bit. And that is the part of the problem with this match is when you set the expectation that anything short of death is where you're going with the match. Can you imagine what a punch meant? Nothing. It meant absolutely nothing. No. Can you imagine what a low blow may have meant? It meant absolutely nothing. So when you raise that level of expectation so high, people are waiting for the craziness. And so from the perspective of what those dudes were willing to go through, the chances that they were taking with their bodies, more power to them, much respect.
And what trust they have with each other, huh?
Doing moves on a cinder block, doing moves with a syringe. I still don't understand the syringe gimmick. Was that a live needle? Like, was that needle actually going into my guy's gums?
I mean, this was not the needle that they used. Yeah, it went in his mouth. It doesn't really hurt. I mean, really. But
no,
I mean,
it does hurt. Like, it pinches. It pinches for sure.
It pinches. But I mean, this guy, for half the stuff that they did, I'm willing to bet that hurt way more. The cinder block probably hurt way more than the needle. You let them go out there and do an insane thing. Now, I don't want to see that too often. I rarely want to see that, but it should mean something.
We saw it a lot. We saw it in the last half of the last half of the show. We saw it twice.
I hate the fluorescent tube spots. I hate that spot. I don't like it at all. It is unnecessary. Why do you have a fluorescent tube? Why is that the weapon you picked?
Because it breaks. It breaks pretty fantastically.
Yeah. It does. And and then you got the whatever the hell is inside of that. You breathe it all inside, and.
Okay, can I tell you my real problem with that pay-per-view?
Yeah. You don't like it. I feel it from you.
So for the first half of the show, I thought this show is way better than All In. Like, that was my feeling. And then the back half of the show, I didn't like it as much. So it took it down a little bit. But my problem, and so this comes from me being an old school fan, me being someone who understands booking and match layout, because I have friends who have done it and they've kind of educated me on, how you're trying to build shows. Can you imagine being Mercedes and Sheeta and being one of, what was it, 2 matches or 3 matches where there wasn't some crazy ass gimmick that smoke and mirrors to everything? They just had to do a straight wrestling match, right? So it's like you have all of these different smoke and mirrors matches, and I really loved the street fight, by the way, Willow and Statlander. I thought it was great. Yeah, that was my favorite match of the night. But It was smoke and mirrors. It was plunder. It's less. It's much easier, I would say, to do that match. Though you have to take a lot of punishment and you take a lot of risks. And I give much kudos to both women for the stuff that they were willing to do. But what happens is when you end the show, the way that they ended it with the Danielson and Jungle Boy thing, repeating a 1989 NWA angle that did not work, by the way. And
In
then
1989.
you get the chaos of that main event. If you're the Young Bucks and Claudio and Wheeler Yuta, your pretty good match is like not even remembered by the end of that show. Because how could it be? Why should it be? You're just overshadowed by the chaos of the main event. So from the perspective of like trying to put a show together, this is how I explained Tony Khan's booking of that show to somebody. I see, I have two dogs. One of my dogs is, he's pretty smart, but the other one, she is so all about food that if I was to just leave out kibble, an endless supply of kibble, she would just eat herself to death because she loves food so much. And that is what Tony Khan's booking was on Sunday.
Yeah.
It was like, I'm just going to keep eating and eating and eating and eating and eating and eating and eating. And I, as the viewer, was like, could we stop? Like, I'm kind of ready to end the show. I don't need the next thing to take it to the next level. Like, how about we go a little bit of baby steps? But there is a fan base who really, really enjoyed that match. I have a lot of people who have told me, I never want to see that again, but I really liked what I saw. And that doesn't really make sense to me. It kind of means to me that they're excusing some of the stuff, or maybe they don't want to be the outspoken person who's kind of against it. They want to be part of the cool kids. I don't care about being part of the cool kids anymore. I'm way too old to worry about being part of the cool kids. So I feel like I can give, kind of like my unbiased and unfiltered opinion on this without hearing from social media and stuff.
I think some of it is also, we're in a little bit of an echo chamber here with wrestling because, we cover it. We are, we know the history of it. We're older. But if you're 16 years old and you're tuning into that match, are you saying, oh my gosh, that was too violent for me? Or are you saying, holy moly, what the hell was that?
Or are you just going to go watch Faces of Death videos?
Listen, it's not 1987 anymore.
That was a Faces of Death wrestling match. Or it's the one that
I had those.
My stepkids watch, which is the kids on the skateboard doing crazy tricks and just wiping out on pavement. Like, that's what that match was. It was very, very entertaining. But the car crash element was what people were waiting for. There was an art form to what they were doing, obviously. Those guys are great. And I can say that I didn't like the match that much, even though I respect the stuff that they did. So, all right, quick change. We have a couple minutes left. I want to hit you with some quick WWE stuff. Raw goes to 2 hours on the USA Network through October through the end of the year. How excited are you that they're taking an hour off of this show?
Hang on. Pro wrestling. There's a super chat here that we missed.
Oh, okay.
Pro Wrestling Joker. Much love for you both. Two great dudes. Have a great show.
That's my guy right there.
Kisses.
Let me give you a little bit of insight on Pro Wrestling Joker. Pro Wrestling Joker, hardcore WWE fan. And when I kind of think through what I'm watching on TV, I go to him because he's watching it from the perspective of like someone who really enjoys the product. And so then I can kind of bounce things off of him. And we don't often agree on stuff, but I really love, I want to put him over because he's a really good person. Yeah. Okay, so Raw goes to 2 hours from October through December. This is, I think we're going to be a little spoiled here for these few months of only having 2 hour Raws before we go back to it in January for the 3 hour.
Yeah, but I don't think we're going, but you know what? That 3 hours is not going to be set in stone every week.
I can't imagine Netflix is paying all that money for 2 hours of WWE.
But you know what? But if you're doing, but look at it this way, right? Are there going to be commercials?
There has to be, right? Why would Netflix invest in it?
Okay.
It's a play to up their lower tier subscription. I think like that's what all live content is.
Yeah, but
for them,
are you going to have a commercial free version?
I can't imagine. I think we're getting double dipped, man. For us who don't have,
We're getting double dipped.
I think we're gonna get
Okay,
double
so
dipped.
let's say there are commercials, right? And you're on Netflix. I mean, you could do 2 hours and 30 minutes, and that would be a little bit more tolerable, or 248 or 218, or maybe go over 3 hours if it's like a mega show. I think they're going to have wiggle room there. I don't think it's going to be consistent at 3 hours.
Yeah, I mean that's the Netflix model. I watched the latest season of Cobra Kai, and episodes ranged from like 28 minutes to 40 minutes, depending on the story that they were
and
trying
I think
to tell.
that's fine. I think that's great.
But the reason why I think they want to lean longer, though, is because think about the metrics and how the metrics work. They just want people to stay on the service as long as possible. Like they're driving engagement with the service. And so if the show is 2.5 hours and really it should be 3 hours and 10 minutes, if I'm Netflix, I'm like, hey guys, where's my extra 40 minutes? Because you multiply that 40 minutes times the, 10 million people who watch live or whatever that number is, not 10, probably, 3 or 4.
Yeah.
That's a lot of opportunity for us to show them more stuff. And so I think they would be probably pretty frustrated with that if you did cut it a considerable amount. But at the same time, you're not worrying about overrun. You're not worrying about getting out because the next show is coming on. You're just kind of, you can peak things at different times because you're not looking for top of the hour versus what else you're competing against as much. Maybe you do somewhat, but that's going to be a whole interesting thing if they change the way that they do that show. But I think the trick will be for Netflix users, start an hour late, fast forward through everything else, right? Like that's got to be the trick.
I don't know how much watch hours mean anymore for streaming. I don't know if that metric from like a couple of years. Remember, a couple of years ago, it was all about watch hours, and WWE was obsessed with the watch hours, and that's why you got these 45-day long pay-per-views that I would melt watching. I think we're looking at more of they're gonna have flexibility, which is fine. The other thing is, the maturity of the content on Netflix and what they're going to do there. That I was told that 100% they're going to lean into this when they need to. Not saying they're going to drop the F-bomb every week. It's going to be the Attitude Era. But, they will not have to censor things. Like if, remember, and it keeps playing in my head, that Matt Riddle and Seth Rollins promo. Remember that? Where they did that split screen?
Yes.
And they were bleeping everybody. And
yes.
they can't, that will play out on Netflix. I was told when they decide to do something like that, they will play that out. Same goes for in ring when something happens. Even though WWE they told the talent to stop cursing, but they're gonna lean into this a little bit. They have freedom now to do this. This is as close to WWE going on HBO or Showtime than we've ever been. I'm very interested by
that. That is fascinating to even think about. All right, I have 2 other quick ones, and then we'll get out of here. I know we're running up against it. Are you excited for the new Saturday night's main event?
Yeah, is that what it's going to be?
I think that story just came out today that they put out a trademark for Saturday night's main event.
I have my sign right there. I guess I could use that one now. Yeah, WWE filed trademark for Saturday night's main event. Yeah.
Yeah, if you go to f4wonline.com, from Joseph Courier, ahead of its likely return to NBC, WWE has applied for a new trademark for Saturday night's main event. The filing was made on September 9th and is for the term Saturday night's main event relating to merchandising purposes. It is listed as covering a bunch of different items. So I think we're going to see it. Makes sense to me. It's a
Yeah.
brand that was meaningful when we were younger, not as much anymore, but maybe they can. I think they're going to have to put big stuff on it for it to matter again, though.
Yeah, and I'm curious how we would do, with like a mega match.
Mm-hmm.
Now that WWE is much hotter than they were when they were running those Saturday night's main events a decade ago. That really, and those shows really didn't mean much. I think now with, what if you do Cody versus Roman?
Yeah.
What can that do on network television on NBC?
Or
like that's a great question.
Give me the mega powers with Cody and Roman in a tag team.
Do one of those.
Okay, last one. Bad Blood is coming. That day is going to be crazy. You know why?
Why?
So for this website and for the stuff that I do on this website, the day of Bad Blood, it starts an hour early, and then after Bad Blood is over is the UFC show. So I have to watch both shows, cover both shows, and then do Wrestling Observer Radio with Dave after. That's going to be a long-ass day. When are we? And then Collision's on that same day. Collision should just not run that day. They're going to get destroyed. All right. Bad Blood. 3 matches made so far. Damian Priest against Finn Balor. Liv Morgan against Rhea Ripley. And the heavily rumored and logical Hell in a Cell match. CM Punk versus Drew McIntyre. Does that card excite you so far?
I mean, that's fine. Yeah, I'm very interested in the CM Punk Drew match. I thought they did a great job with that strap match. 4 corners. Again, we were talking about this,
Drew.
right? Like,
Drew's kind of
the
taking the
stuff.
piss out of the match, though. Drew's like, "Oh yeah, you touch 4 corners, big whoop." I'm like, "Oh, you did now that strap match, no one's gonna care next time." Not that we cared that much this time.
Not that we cared, but I think we cared because they did such a good job.
Yeah,
with it.
because they were so good at it. Yeah.
I'm interested in it. Yeah, the WWE's good. It's fine. I enjoy it. People, I get so much accusation like, you hate WWE. I go to every Garden show with my kids. I have a great time at every, I never disparage it. I think the wrestling is fine. It is a very different presentation. I could like both. I could like a mainstream, shiny presentation, but I could also like, the AEW stuff, which is not as shiny and not as mainstream as WWE. I think balance is fine. I think WWE is on fire. I don't see it diminishing anytime soon with Roman returning and Cena coming back also. I think they're just, now you're going into the busy season again. You're going to have a great War Games. I'm sure they're going to do something interesting for there. You're going to back in Rumble, and now you're in WrestleMania season.
And then there was the Gunther and Bret Hart segment. What did you think of that segment?
I love seeing Bret on TV. I thought it was hysterical. He couldn't stop laughing when he said Goldberg's his favorite wrestler. Just hysterical.
You know what? As I was watching that promo, I was like, God, Bret Hart versus Gunther. That would have been a really cool match. And then I was like, oh yeah, but it can't happen. Bret Hart's 60 some odd years old, and they're selling a Sammy versus Gunther match, which we just saw at WrestleMania, which was a really good match. I just don't buy Sammy as a contender necessarily, but it looks like they are moving in that direction. But yeah, I was like, oh man, I want to see Bret versus Gunther now. That would have been awesome.
I know.
In
you know what?
1996.
I told Rich this morning that when he mentioned Goldberg's name, you saw like a little hologram shake in Bret where you got the old Bret Hart for like a second. Like the rage made him reverse age. He was aging in reverse for a split second just so he could do something again. Bret is one of those guys that we really got cheated out of for the last couple years of his career.
Oh yeah.
He never, could you just imagine post WCW Bret not hurt, returning back in some capacity,
Austin rematch.
Holy moly. There's so much. We as fans, we really got robbed of that man's career, and so did he. He got really robbed. He never was able to leave the way he wanted to leave, and that has ate him up, and obviously that's why he has all this resentment. If you kick me in my head, and that, and then and that was a catalyst. Not saying that was the exact moment, but that was a catalyst for all these problems that ended my amazing career.
Mm-hmm.
I would never be able to forgive you. That would be that would be a tough pill for me to swallow and this is how it ends.
Well,
I'm
okay,
just
but we know that he ended the beef with Shawn Michaels. We saw that. And I don't know what their relationship is like. I can't imagine they have like the tightest relationship, but he ended that beef, which I'm guessing means he ended the Triple H beef as well, because Triple H was really the catalyst behind, partial catalyst behind the Montreal Screwjob. He somewhat, I guess, had to agree with Vince because that was the biggest beef before him coming back. The one that he seems to not care too much, like you said, Goldberg, and there's a lot of Russo and Bischoff negativity that is still out there for him. But yeah, I agree with you. But man, it would have been a lot of fun to see a Gunther and Bret Hart match in their primes. That's a
yeah,
great dream match that we would have been able to look at in the Pro Wrestling Illustrated, and have a discussion. But all right,
yeah,
we went a little bit longer than usual. Sorry about that. I know the TV stuff is something that Andrew is really close to right now, so we wanted to give that enough time. Shout out to Pro Wrestling Joker. Shout out to Trust the Process. Love you guys. And we're done here. So for Andrew, I am Double G. We will see you when we see you. Peace out.